It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We back. The dynamic fantasy hockey duo is whole once again. Steelers return for a big-time Wednesday episode, and we're tapped into all the latest NHL buzz that you need to know. Jack Eichel back on the ice. The Sens taking calls on Tarasenko and Chychrun. And Tyler Seguin's opportunity leaving a hole for Logan Stankoven. Let's tap in and let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Things are getting a little tighter around the break, I promise. And a juicy episode is on tap for Wednesday of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And we are back in a big way, baby. And a shout out to all the everydayers for making us your first listen every single day. Steele, my co-host, back in the booth just in time for today's episode to be brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Steele, I know you've been away from the show, but I know you haven't been away from the NHL newsreel, one in which has been absolutely on fire the last couple of days. I've been doing my best without you, but now that you're back in the booth, this is the perfect time to talk about a number of different situations developing in the NHL. Number one, Jack Eichel is one of those game-changing abilities that we just saw take a team all the way to the Stanley Cup and win it. He is back on the ice. This means something. We're going to talk about it. And does it affect the Vegas Golden Knights? Are they going to be buyers? I want to ask you about what you think they're going to do last season. One of the best ads at the deadline in Ivan Barbashev. Can they do it again? Let's see what happens. The Sens, obviously at the other end of the spectrum. That's too bad, isn't it, Steele? But they are going to be taking calls on a number of players, including, most interestingly, Tarasenko and Chychrun. And although I butchered it off the top, I'm cooking now, Steele. Tyler Seguin is out. Week to week, I spoke about this on Monday and the opportunity for Logan Stankoven, a player that's gotten it done at every level. And now look at him go. So we're going to talk about this as well. I need to pick your brain on that situation. Wednesday's bets. Let's have at it. Jack Eichel, this is your boy. What are you seeing in Vegas, and what do you think of this situation?
Yeah, this is a good situation for the Vegas Golden Knights as they've struggled over the last 10 games, 4-5-1. Obviously, you want a caliber player like Jack Eichel back in the lineup. You don't want to rush him, though, if he has any nagging injuries, but this is a good sign. And it seems like the Vegas Golden Knights are getting all of their significant injuries out of the way early so they can be fully healthy going into the playoffs. Shea Theodore's gone through one. Of course, Mark Stone's gone through one. Jack Eichel's gone through one. And a numerous amount of Aiden Hill's gone through one as well. So they've got all the injuries out of the way. Hopefully, they're going to be fully healthy, prepared going into the playoffs. Talking about the NHL trade deadline and if they're going to be active, I mean, I don't necessarily believe that they have to add at the deadline. They most likely will, but I don't think they have to, because when this team is fully healthy, the Vegas Golden Knights are a top 3 team in the league, and they got it everywhere along their roster group right now. Like, they've got one of the best tandem goalie tandems that we've seen, like we've talked about, and one of the best goalies in Aiden Hill. They've got a bunch of big, bad bruisers on the blue line who can move the puck forward quickly. They've got a top 6 that is just as deadly as the best in the league. And I just want to go through some of the numbers from last year to this year.
Love it.
Last year, they finished the league 14th best in goals for and 11th in goals against. I mean, that's pretty good. Pretty decent for the Vegas Golden Knights. This year, they are currently 14th in goals for, the exact same as last season, and actually 8th in goals against. So they're actually better defensively than last year. So they're in the same scenario again. This is why I'm saying they don't have to be aggressive or add significant pieces at the deadline, but they probably will. And the area where I believe that they should address is really the bottom 6 group. With all the injuries that they have had, it's obviously it's better to have the depth there going into the postseason after the trade deadline and all that. So a few guys that I've put on my list: Scott Lawton of the Philadelphia Flyers, Frank Vetrano, Warren Fogle, the Edmonton Oilers. All three of those players are under $3.7 million on low term or UFAs heading into next year. So these are going to be, just pieces. These are going to be, I'm blanking on the word right now, but these are going to be pieces that they just use for the playoffs and for the postseason. Maybe they can sign them to a term.
Yeah, it's like a hired gun.
Exactly. And maybe they do something like they did with
a rental.
A
rental?
Exactly. That's the word. That's the word I'm looking for. It's just going to be a rental heading into the postseason. But those three guys, I think, would be great in the bottom six for the Vegas Golden Knights. And again, there's not a lot of room with the cap that they have right now. But they've got a lot of first-round draft picks, second-round draft picks that they can use in order to acquire maybe some of these players. But those would be my three that they should target.
Lawton, I absolutely love this deal. I can also tell you've been digging and doing your research today, so shout out to you. Lawton, I could for sure see. Vetrano, I could see. I don't so much seeing the Oilers moving on from Fogle only because he
I
has
don't see it either.
Some good chemistry. Although I'm liking all three of those angles, and I just want to say this because you brought up the injuries to key pieces. Mark Stone has a lacerated spleen. This guy is just takes one significant injury after another. And it's not like, he has a busted finger. It's like a shoulder's popped, a broken foot, something bad with his knee. It's always something significant. And once again, though,
don't forget his back either.
His back. Like, how is this guy even still able to walk to the rink, let alone get it done at elite level on the ice? However, I just wanted to highlight the point that it goes hand in hand with this. This Vegas Golden Knights has been able to get it done with significant injuries to every single position for prolonged periods of time and still gone on to win the cup. So if there's any team that has proven to their front office that regardless of what the product is on the ice in terms of the roster, because of injuries, whatever is on the ice is good enough to get it done. Ergo, you're probably going to want to look to add. I'm with you on the cap situation. However, we had to bring up that Eichel is going to be back. That might be the biggest add that they could potentially have, and maybe it makes their need at the deadline much more bottom six focused, like you said. However, Mark Stone being out is significant. Jack Eichel, 19 goals, 25 assists in 42 games this season. That's all I need to be saying about that because I want to move on. I want to move on to the Ottawa Senators because I also forgot about mentioning Marc-Andre Fleury's deal because we do need to mention that as well. And you know what? If you're good with it, let's mention it right now quickly before the break. And we'll save the Sens and we'll save Seguin. But let's just say this. I'm not buying into Flowers' comments, not one iota, in terms of his potential to still move. Do I buy into him as a leading veteran who will say all the right things and continue to be a leader? 100%. Do I believe he is fully willing to play out his time in Minnesota? 100%.
Yes. Yeah.
Do I think, though, if for some reason, I know Minis look real good of late, they're playing great hockey and probably doing a little bit of convincing to Billy G themselves about what to do at the deadline. But if they end up missing out Steele, which is still a very good possibility, you know he's not going to miss an opportunity to beef up that stock, that draft board. And I think Marc-Andre Fleury is still very, very much in play, even though, quote unquote, he is putting a stop to the rumors. I'm not buying it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily buy into that either. I think Bill Guerin will do what's best for his team, whether that's selling or buying. I don't know, but I believe in Billy G, and we've seen in the past that he doesn't care what he has to do, especially when it comes to goaltenders. If we can think back to the situation with Cam Talbot and everything. I will say this, though, about the Minnesota Wild. They are a very average team, and they have been an average team for a long time. And I think over the last 2 to 3 seasons, we've seen the potential of what this team can do and where they can go, especially obviously with Kirill Kaprizov, Boldy, Rossi, Eriksson Ek, Gustafsson, Brock Faber now this year. I think now is the time for the Wild to swing for the fences. And I'm not saying buy everything and get rid of all your draft picks, but I'm saying this is a good time to swing for the fences, maybe add a top 6 forward and a top 4 defenseman at the same time before the trade deadline. I mean, I believe they are a playoff team, and I believe they still have a lot to get to get into the postseason.
Interesting.
They have a lot of they have all of their draft picks in the first 2 rounds. And if they have to trade Marc-Andre Fleury, then so be it. I would love for him to remain with the Minnesota Wild for the foreseeable future. But if he has to go, he's probably the biggest, trade value-wise for the Minnesota Wild to use right now. And there's a lot of teams out there wanting a starting goaltender or a veteran goaltender in this retrospective. So for me, I think they should swing for the fences. I got to take another look at the trade board there because there's a lot of great top 4 defensemen out there. I'm not sure about top 6 forwards, but I think that would be my case heading into the deadline for the Minnesota Wild.
I like it. Marc-Andre Fleury, 12-10-3, 1 shutout, 2.92 goals against, and a .900 save percentage. Colorado, I could see. Carolina, I could see. I could also see him being a nice little tutelage for perhaps Joseph Woll down the stretch. If Toronto really does think that they are in this and Brad Treliving is actually getting creative, because I have a feeling the Toronto Maple Leafs might just stand pat just because Steele. Chris Tanev, paying a whole high price for Chris Tanev, nice little tease to the Dallas Stars, isn't going to be the be-all and end-all for anything, and you're going to have to sacrifice so much for then what? So anyway, that's a whole other thing. But if you start to play and you put yourself in a really good position and maybe get a good first-round opponent, maybe it does make sense that ahead of the draw, you went out and got a guy like Fleury. I don't know. I'm just getting a little crazy here, Steele. It's because you've been away, but you're back, and right around the break, we're going to talk about the Ottawa Senators and those Dallas Stars, a team that have been apparently the most aggressive in looking at Chris Tanev. So we're going to talk about Seguin, Stankoven, and a whole bunch of other fun fantasy tidbits. But today's episode is brought to you by, among others, Game Time. We're loving Game Time. You got to be checking out the Game Time app, because all of your favorite events are on the Game Time app. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets, comedy, theater, all of your favorite sporting events, NHL right down to UFC. You can check out Game Time, all of the deals from the tickets, from the start of the event all the way through to the end. Make sure you're taking the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use code LOCKOEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. All on your NBA favorite players and teams. You can be doing quick bets, live same-game parlays, props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you make your way over to the YouTube channel of Locked On Sports today. They are here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. So make sure you go over to YouTube and subscribe to the Locked On Sports Today YouTube channel. You can also find it on Amazon Fire TV, so make sure you check that out as well. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. We got a lot more to talk about. Big time bets.
Yes,
only two games on the schedule for Wednesday. The Dallas Stars are in heavy trade conversations with the Calgary Flames. Chris Tanev maybe. Also, Logan Stankoven has been pretty good so far in his first two NHL games.
Not bad.
But let's continue the conversation with these Ottawa Senators. Will they be buyers or sellers at the trade deadline? They'll probably be sellers. I'll throw it over to you for your take on this.
Why don't you, Steele?
I've got a pretty good take on Jacob Chychrun.
I bet you do. And you know what, Steele? I'm here for it. What I'm also here for is this take on Vladimir Tarasenko, because that's where I'm looking at number one.
Awesome.
Because there are a lot of teams. I'm here in Colorado. If they bring Nichushkin in and they bring Tarasenko in, Nichushkin comes back because he's skating again and he's able to steal. He has 22 goals this year. 13 of them are on the power play. They have the 7th best power play without arguably their most elite secondary fantasy piece. Obviously McKinnon, Rantanen. But if he comes back and they're able to bring in a player like Tarasenko and perhaps augment that, this team is going to go back to the Cup final. Anyway, you know me, I like throwing out bold predictions, but this isn't bold. What's happening in Ottawa, they're taking calls on almost everybody aside from some of those core pieces. And this makes sense. Steele, they're 19 points back of the second wildcard spot. This season has been cooked. And I'm all here for fans in Ottawa getting fired up, totally down. They've been playing better of late. But they're doo-doo. And the season is trash. And that's okay. It happens, man. At least we're caught garbage for 10 years. I'm not here to throw shade. We've done enough of that. The fact remains is Tarasenko moves, value through the roof. Even a player like if someone comes around Dominic Kubalik, who's been bad, I don't know. I think the value goes up because he just needs a change of scenery. And I don't know, and I'll allude this to you with Chychrun. This guy has been mentioned in more trade rumors over a 2-year span than I think any other player that we've talked about. And I don't know what that means. And I'm not close enough to the team to understand. But is there something wrong with this guy between the ears or what? Because I'll leave it at this. He was on fire under DJ Smith.
Yes.
And under Jacques Martin, he has been a ghost, and the numbers back him up.
Yeah,
So I just
I've
don't
got
know
the
what that
numbers.
means, but I'm just concerned about his value.
I'm very glad that you brought that up because he's starting to remind me of Pierre-Luc Dubois, but a defensive
Oh.
version of him. There might be something going on with him between the ears right now
Yep.
because it doesn't make sense what's going on with this guy throughout his career. Like, he is truly an anomaly to me at this point. He's 25 years old. The ceiling for Jacob Chychrun is so high, yet so far out of reach because of this type of season that we're watching. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's a complete 180. And I've got the numbers here to back it up. First 30 games this year, he had 24 points. He was a 0 on the plus minus category and 14 penalty minutes. In the last 26 games, he has 6 points, minus 15, which is second worst on the team, 32 penalty minutes, which is second worst on the team. And he just is not contributing anywhere on the ice. We know this guy can jump up and do things offensively, but you are a defenseman. You are now a liability in the defensive zone, and that's why this guy continues to be brought up in these rumor trades. And we've talked at length. A lot of hockey fans and sports fans everywhere have talked at length about the Toronto Maple Leafs season acquisitions of Bertuzzi, Domi, Reeves. I'll throw Klingberg in there, not living up to the expectations of what they should have.
Domi's been better, but I'm here for the rest.
Yeah. We had expectations. We had expectations of what they should have brought when they first started here. And now we're starting to see the value with those players as they continue to play better, much better with each other, with other line mates. And Ottawa has gone through that same store of, acquiring people in the offseason, trading players, but they're paying a way higher price right now, literally, because look at the guys they brought in. Jacob Chychrun, Korpisalo, the 4x5 deal that he's got, Tarasenko. And out of all the players, Dominique Kubalik, out of all those players, Tarasenko's actually been quite good, honestly, in my books.
I agree.
Other than that, Korpisalo's been dog water.
Up and down,
Jacob Chychrun's been a complete 180 from the first half to this half of the season. I mean, it's just in complete shambles right now. And I understand the Ottawa Senators are playing better, but this is an ongoing thing with the Ottawa Senators of, even you and I, before the season started, we thought they were potentially going to be a playoff team.
I was calling them a wild card team, Steele.
Come March 8th, come the NHL trade deadline. No, they are sellers once again. And it is really, as much as we don't like the Ottawa Senators, we were rooting for them to be a better team than what we saw the last year. Tim Stützle has been pretty bad this year as well compared to the first two seasons. I mean, it's just been a gong show for Ottawa.
The pieces are still very much there. I'm not ready to give up on players on the back end either, and Jake Sanderson or Thomas Chabot. Maybe their value is just a little bit lower than what we expected. I don't know what you were going to say, something there, Steele.
No, I was just going to say, like, at one point, I don't think it's going to happen this trade deadline because I know the Locked On Senators guys have talked about it. I know a lot of Ottawa Senators fans have talked about it, but at some point, they are going to have to trade one of those top four guys. With the higher contracts, obviously Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk, and they're probably going to stay. But at some point, Drake Batherson or Josh Norris, someone's got to go.
8 players signed through the 2027 season, at least. Tkachuk, Stützle, Norris, Batherson, Chabot, Zub, Sanderson, and Korpisalo, long-term deals. They're going to have to get creative, Steele. And
yes, they are.
Maybe they are able to do it. There just is a lot of angles to be covered here fantasy-wise because Tarasenko moves, I want him. Chychrun goes to a winner, perhaps. I don't see a team paying a high price for a guy who's been this bad over the last chunk of months, but obviously the talent and ability is there. Everything he can do, quote unquote, and this is why I think a lot of people are still hanging on to Jacob Chychrun in a lot of leagues, is because of what he can do when he's on his game. Offensive beaut, throws the body, isn't afraid to block shots, gets penalty minutes. He is a banger league stud, and then he goes days and weeks by doing nothing. So anyway, we're not going to do anything but keep feeding you this fantasy fire for the rest of the episode. Right around the break, we got to talk about the Dallas Stars very quickly. Seguin, Stankoven, what's going on with this Chris Tanev news? Because you know how much I'm buying into the forward group in Dallas, Steele. So maybe Chris Tanev, as much as it's not a fit in Toronto because they are so far away, maybe Chris Tanev is the perfect piece for a team that needs a little bit more help in front of that goaltender and Jake Ottinger. However, take us to break, my friend, because I'm cooking with these bets, and I'm feeling it in a big, big way tonight.
Let's get after it on the 2-game schedule for Wednesday night. But first, this episode is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hammer that subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Let us know in the comments what you want Flip and I to talk about on a recurring segment, a recurring episode every single week. Let us know what you think in the comments on the YouTube channel, or DM us on Twitter, or I guess now the X. I can't call it the X still. Anyway, DM us over on Twitter. Let's get over to the Dallas Stars. Logan Stankoven, Tyler Seguin injury, Chris Tanev news. I'll throw it over to you. Where would you like to start with these Stars?
I'm starting to feel like a bit of a Stars homer, but look, I'm okay with it, and I've thrown out a lot of West Coast teams as ones that I think I have 3 that I've been really talking about quite a bit.
Edmonton, Colorado, are those the 3?
Dallas, Edmonton, Colorado have been the 3 that you know what, and I have loot on all 3 of them, so I'll put my money where my mouth is, literally. But those are the teams that I continue to look at, and I can't help but feel, I hope one of those predictions comes to fruition, especially the Dallas Stars, because I think I've been on them the most and the earliest, and I'll just say this. Yeah, okay, Logan Stankoven came in. I said, have a look. That's obvious. He's performed at every single level that he has played at, including this season in the AHL, 57 points. And over the last 2 seasons in the WHL still, 211 points in, I believe, about 100 and change games. Anyway, he is going to play on this really good third line, and I've talked all about the balance in Dallas with Wyatt Johnston and Jamie Benn. Love that line. Perfect line for him to play with. A young player in Wyatt Johnston that has all the kinds of talent and offensive flair that makes a player like Stankoven comfortable, but then you also have that insulation of Jamie Benn's veteran presence. It's the perfect way to let this kid settle in. And hey, if he needs to move up on the second line and play with Duchesne and Marchment because he's feeling it after Seguin comes back, because we know that Jamie Benn, Seguin, Johnston line was playing pretty well, that works out too. What this means for me with the Dallas Stars is this rumor about Chris Tanev, and I'll slide right into that, makes so much sense, Steele, because you bring in a player like Stankoven who brings that little bit of young offensive flair that can be that kind of energy that brings the team over the top, and then you anchor it down with a big bruiser in Tanev on the back end, because if there's one obvious, quote-unquote, glaring issue with this team, I would say it's defensive depth, because up front, they 100%. Are balanced and talented. Scott Wedgwood and Jake Ottinger, honestly, Steele, at this point, you go into the first round with, obviously, Jake Ottinger, but if he struggles or gets hurt, with the team in front of him, I'm totally fine with your backup option being Scott Wedgwood, so this is where I'll leave it. This team, the way that it's formed, and I know it's not exactly been performing and firing at all cylinders, they are still in first place in that Central, and they're 4-3-3 in their last 10. So this is a very much for real squad, and I'll leave it at that.
It is a very for real squad indeed.
Thank you.
And I understand why you've been so heavily behind this team over the last couple of seasons, especially this year as well, because they've lived up further than what our expectations would have been prior to the season starting. I'll start with Logan Stankoven because this kid is going to be special in the NHL.
I agree.
And just the 2 games that I've watched, like I don't watch a lot of Dallas Stars games, but from the 2 games that I have watched with him, you know, obviously rewatching the highlights as well, he's going to be special. He's got so much talent. I mean, 2 games in, he already has 2 points, a power play assist, 5
he's getting
shots,
a lot of
blocks,
power play
5
time.
hits. He's getting that second power play time, and the second power play has been very good for Dallas as well. And you hit it on the nail on your solo episode yesterday as well, talking about Logan Stankoven and what he is going to bring to this team and this opportunity now with Tyler Seguin now. And you said it again today. You know, he leads the American Hockey League with 57 points this year. He dominated the Western Hockey League for 2 years prior, 97 points, I believe, and 107 points. He's played tremendous for Team Canada at the World Juniors the last 2 years as well. I mean, this kid has hit everybody's expectations at every level. It's really good to see him in the NHL right now. I'll go over to address the glaring, obvious issue with this team heading into the playoffs, and you hit it again. It's the defensive depth here. For me, and I love these two players. We talk very highly about them. But going into the postseason,
I know what you're about to say.
A 22-year-old Thomas Harley and a 24-year-old Miro Heiskanen as your top D pairing. And then you're following that up with Ryan Suter, who's almost 40 years old, who's proven last year and the year prior that he is a liability in the playoffs. I mean, this is going to be a glaring issue for the Stars in the playoffs. And I really like Esa Lindell. I don't know too much about Joel Hanley and Derek Pouliot, but I mean, for me, again, I've talked about Ryan Suter a little bit. He's just at that age right now where I wouldn't feel confident with him on the ice, especially in the postseason. So they're definitely going to address the blue line. I like Chris Tanev, Sean Walker potentially. I think they really need to address some right-handed shot defensemen. I don't even think any of their defensemen are right shot defensemen.
I could see them going after both. And considering what I am reading into, and obviously the guys in the Dallas front office know a whole lot more about hockey than I do, but something tells me they're liking, maybe. But something tells me they're liking their lineup even more than I am. They're sitting first in their division, and they have all the makings of a Stanley Cup champion. The only thing I would also like to see, in addition to, that's why I think, Steele, they are so close. They also have a first-round pick and a second-round pick in 2 out of the next 3 drafts. Just missing a second-rounder in the 2025. Otherwise, they got 3 first and 2 seconds. So I can see at least 1 or 2 of those going out the door. We're rumored to hear that it's going to take probably a first for Chris Tanev, Sean Walker, maybe a little bit more, maybe the same. However, if they do that, I want more out of Rupe Hintz. We saw him get it done in last season's postseason. What was that game? He had a power play,
shorthanded, even strength. Yeah, it was.
That doesn't happen very often. That's Mario Lemieux level stuff in the postseason. I'm not calling him Mario Lemieux. I'm just going to say this before we get to bets, that if they go out there and they add some names on the blue line, I want that forward group to step up because I know they've been good, but Jason Robertson and Rupe Hintz to me are those kind of, they're that second tier of quote-unquote stars, no pun intended, in the league that need to take that next step. We saw Jason Robertson do it one time last season. He's falling a little bit short of my offensive output expectations. However, this team's in first place, and we talked all about it. Should we go to bets, or would you like to say something about my take there?
Let's go straight to bets because, again, you hit it right on the nail there. I agree with every point you just made. So 2 games on the schedule for Wednesday night. New York Rangers taking on the Columbus Blue Jackets. Edmonton Oilers taking on the St. Louis Blues. I've got 3 picks here, 2 from the same game, obviously. First pick, though, this Wednesday night, I'm just going with gut picks.
I don't blame you.
Gut picks alone. Rangers on the puck line against the Columbus Blue Jackets for my first pick and lock of the night. Second pick, Oilers on the puck line against the St. Louis Blues. If you look at the trend, it doesn't look very positive for the Oilers against the Blues. But again, I'm going with my gut here. Oilers on the puck line for my second pick. And it's been a long time for this player. He hasn't done too great of late in the offensive zone. He hasn't been scoring too many goals, but he's getting the opportunities. I'm going with Evander Kane anytime goal against the St. Louis Blues because he's getting those opportunities. He's putting up 4 shots on average over the last 10 games.
Yeah.
He just needs to get one over the goal line.
I really like that one, Steele. Look, this is a tough board. One in which, though, with a little bit more digging, I'm feeling 3 picks. First one, St. Louis, Edmonton. It's got to be over. The last time that they faced off, it was 9 goals. Edmonton looks PO'd right now. They've lost a couple of games that they definitely should have won, and Connor McDavid is fielding far too many questions about why he's not scoring goals. And I don't know if you saw his response to the media last night. He goes, "What do you mean? I don't want to score goals anymore. I'm just going for assists." Good little hockey humor because it wasn't that funny, but he's being honest. He needs to score more goals, and that's a fact. And I think this Edmonton team is due for an explosion. And why not a St. Louis Blues team that has been allowing quite a few goals of late? I know Jordan Binnington is having a better season, but they just allowed 6 against the Detroit Red Wings. So why not another big game for Edmonton, which is why I'm taking the over, and I'm taking the Oilers on the money line. However, head-to-head steal. The last 10 between these two, edge St. Louis 6-3-1. But this Edmonton team needs to turn it around because we're not going to go through this madness again, are we, Steele? Where the goaltending lets them down after, let's be honest, Stuart Skinner was good there for a couple of games. But Connor McDavid in this forward group, Zach Hyman and others, Evan Bouchard, big games, have been bailing out their goaltenders. Yeah. So that can't happen anymore if you're going to have me out here talking about $20 on Edmonton for the cup. So Edmonton needs to turn it around in a big way. 4-5-1 in their last 10 against St. Louis. They need to be better. They were really good against LA, 4-2 win. That's the second pick. I'm going to stop talking and finish with my favorite pick of the night in Vincent Trocheck anytime point. I love Vincent Trocheck. He is a fantasy darling. And if you can get him on your club, I've talked all about it. You're in great, great shape. However, in his career against the Columbus Blue Jackets, 31 games, Mr. Trocheck has the second most points he has against any team in his career. 25 points in 31 games, 11 goals, 14 assists. I'm going Vinny Trocheck anytime point along with the Oilers and the over. I'm feeling all three of those deal, even though it is a tough night.
Vinny Trocheck, the human Swiss Army knife. The guy can literally do it all. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. You can also find it on Amazon Fire TV. Make sure you go check it out and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.